why are you going off and spending other time on different things which are taking away from you actually succeeding with the big picture?
So it's almost like a safety net, right? If these three things don't work out, maybe this one will work out, and maybe this one will work out, right?
Startup founders all over the world and all over the country, they've got this main thing and they're happy with it, but then they see something shiny in the distance and they go and run towards that and drop what they've got at the moment.
Very rarely it's, down to just one shot in the game. Whereas in football, if you dive and you get a penalty and it's 1-0, then it's a big deal.
But that's why they've brought VAR in. So that the huge decisions that lead to a team winning get solved by a computer.
Yeah. That's where we're going, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, welcome to another episode of Startup Dynamics, hosted by me, Jonas Urbonas, founder of Orfi Active, and joined, as always, by my colleague and employee of Orfi Active, Jack Gerard. And what we do is we talk about different startup issues and introduce our own perspectives.
Yeah.
One thing you keep talking about, and that's why I really wanted to do this episode, is you keep saying that you keep noticing that entrepreneurs and founders and business owners tend to work on a few things at the same time. And I thought, right, let's do a full episode about it, right? Because I think we need to clear this out. Because the thing is, in some cases that's true, in some cases it's not. But first of all, where did that come from? How did you notice that in the first place? Why did that become an observation?
Yeah, so we've started filming these podcasts, and we're on episode 8 now.
Yeah.
And we've had three different founders come in and talk about their startup. And I think all three of them have explained that they've had a main project, but also they're doing a bit on the side. Like our most recent guest, Reese, he's got a sports app that he's passionate about, but also he's running a recruitment company, which is two completely different things. And even from working for you, I've seen we've been working on the main app, which is Orfi Active, but you've always had something else on the go. And it's kind of something that I've yet to understand, really, because from my point of view, we've got the main project, which is Orfi Active. That's our main thing that we're working on. So why wouldn't you or any other founder put 100% of their effort and time into that one thing to make it do well? Why are you kind of going off and spending other time on different things which are taking away from you actually succeeding with the big picture?
Yeah. And I wonder, what are the actual effects as well to when you're working, on the success of the main project, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If you double. So I think there's a few things we need to first really point out, right? There's side projects, side hustles.
Yeah.
And then there's working on multiple big projects at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. And again, it's all very relative to your situation. So when we were speaking with Reese in the last episode, the only real reason he's got the recruitment company together with his Fitter app project is because he's bootstrapping.
What does that mean?
So bootstrapping, he's funding his own project. He didn't have any funding or anything like that.
Okay.
So he needs to generate money in order to be able to do his project, right?
Which makes sense.
And after the conversation, it was very clear that if money was not an issue, if they had enough funding, he would actually leave the recruitment and be full on Fitter, right? And so I think that's one of the main things. So for us, we have Orfi Media and Orfi Active, right? For quite a bit, even though we have funding, it's fairly limited funding. And so any kind of additional penny that comes in is really beneficial for us to do additional marketing hires and stuff like that, which is why Orfi Media is still quite essential for us, but it is not our main thing.
Yeah.
And then you can also dabble, okay? So what I mean by that, so while we do Orfi Media, as you have noticed, I dabbled into other small things, right? So I did Esports Finder, right? I didn't even have a name for it, but like a podcast matchmaking website, where you match guests with shows, right?
Okay.
And so, but if you look at it as a whole, right, Esports Finder is basically exactly the same concept as Orfi Active, just for the esports industry. The reason for that was I was really interested, and I still am very interested in the esports industry, and I wanted to learn about it. And I just saw that, oh, right, they're actually having the same issues of finding venues where the games actually happen, finding exhibitions, meetups, conferences, because esports was so new, people really wanted to learn more about it and get into the industry. And so by doing that, I got really educated on esports, on what the mentality there is, what the opportunities are, what kind of mindset people have there, what are the key players in there, right?
Yeah.
And so even though, I didn't put 110% into that project and, I'm kind of like done with it now, if I want and when I want to do anything within esports, I'm already ahead. I know what steps I'll need to take. I know kind of what works and what doesn't already, and I always keep an eye. So I'm a lot more educated on that.
Yeah.
When it comes to the podcast thing, it was literally that, I started my own podcast, Picking Brains, when I was interviewing entrepreneurs. And, I was like, okay, how do I actually get guests apart from the people that I know?
Yeah.
And it was a very similar thing to Orfi Active. It was like, oh, I want to find something. There's nothing that does that for me. Can I do something on my own? I tried to do it. I saw how much time it takes and what's the effort needed for it to make it into a proper product. And at that point, I decided, all right, is that worth my time? And is that distracting me too much from Orfi Active? Yes, leave it. I know there's an opportunity, and long and behold, 6 months later, there's Matchmaker.fm that came about.
Okay.
Shout out. Which you do exactly that and do an absolutely brilliant job. And it comes from the founders of Podcast.co, right? So it absolutely makes sense for them, and it actually contributes to their main business.
Yeah.
Right? But I dabbled and I understood what actually it's needed, right? So that always is the case. And I'm always going to, I think, dabble a bit. But if I had to choose, I would not want to do Orfi Media, if that answers the question at all, right?
That's what I'm trying to find out. Because like you've talked about Esports Finder there, you've talked about your podcast. Say if they're like, that's 10% of your allotted work time that it takes up. But like you mentioned, you gave it up to spend more time on Orfi Active, and then you've got this different company that's now achieving with that. But I suppose like my question would be, is that, because we've seen it with other founders too, are you able to just work on? It's like you're just constantly distracted, like you picture like someone at school who can't concentrate on the lesson for an hour. It's like a key trait within startup founders. Do you think that they're constantly looking for that?
I think it's an entrepreneurial thing. So first of all, I didn't feel like I sacrificed the time of Orfi Active to work on Esports Finder and stuff like that. I felt like I sacrificed the time of my family, my friends, my free time. I always felt like, I'd rather do that.
Yeah.
But I always wanted to make sure that I give enough to Orfi Active. Now, it is a thing, once you start working on something, once you go into kind of the business world, it feels like your brain molds into this different thing, and you start noticing opportunities everywhere. Once you start understanding the game, it's like, oh, this could be an opportunity. This could be an opportunity. Oh, this could work. This could work, right? And you actually really need to be, self-aware enough and understand where you are in your journey to be able to say, no. While this might be great, maybe it's not the right time. I need to focus, right? And I think focus is the key thing here. And so while I do, and this is why I use the word dabble, right? That means I'm not putting my effort in there. I'm just trying to see what it is so I can be better prepared for the future. And any decision we make with Orfi Active, takes those things into consideration.
Yeah.
Because focus, I think, is absolutely crucial for your main project, right? Now, not everybody is able to do that. As I said again, for me with Orfi Media, with Reese, with this recruitment company, because they just need to fund their side project, right?
Yeah.
But if you take that all out of the way, I think most entrepreneurs would want to be fully focused, quote unquote, in the zone, because once you're there, once you're in the zone, you kind of live and breathe it, and you start noticing things that you otherwise would miss because you're distracted by those things that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And that is definitely very important, right? But I want to give you an example of when it actually still can work, right?
Yeah.
And it very depends on your situation. So maybe you started a business when you're like 18, 19, and you don't give a crap. Like, it's just you, and you can do 16-hour days and, whatever. But you might be in your, mid, late 30s, you've got a family to support, need some safety, but you still want to work on your dream project or whatever, maybe, right? I think WeTransfer. Do you know WeTransfer?
No.
It's like a very straightforward file sharing system.
Right.
They now reached the point where I think they share 1 billion either files or megabytes. I don't know. I think it's files per week.
Okay.
Something ridiculous, right? But they started off in 2009, right? 2 guys.
Yeah.
One of them being Damian Bradfield, and I listened to his interviews and like his journey, and it was quite interesting because what he said was that him and his co-founder, they kept their full-time jobs for 6 years while working on multiple projects on the side.
Yeah.
So they had really well-paid jobs in marketing, and they just always were working on dabbling on different projects on the side. It only happened that WeTransfer was the one that stuck.
Yeah.
All of the others failed, right? And then they bootstrapped the whole thing for 6 years until 2015 when they decided to get initial funding. But that time, the project was so successful that they had, I think, about 50 employees. They were cash flow positive. And so their first round was about 25 million, right? And only then they quit their full-time jobs and just, all right, we're full on WeTransfer. So sometimes it comes down to this also, like, you don't need funding for your project, you need a customer, right? And that's their mentality. So they kept having the money, having the families, having the reputation, but they were able to work on the multiple projects.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm learning joining a startup, the fact that the product we have at the moment is promising, but it's not actually taken off yet.
Yeah.
So therefore, you do have an ability to maybe work on something else, and who knows, that could fly off and really take off.
Yeah.
Whereas, for example, an owner or a CEO of a highly regarded company, he's not going to spend 25% of his time just working on something that's not proven and it's not working, because he's already got that well-established company.
Yeah.
I think my main concern with side projects and whatever, I think it comes from my own experience, to be honest, because I think from the age of about 15 until 18, actually no, probably until I started working here, I'd go through six months periods of wanting to do a completely different career. So it'd go from wanting to be an engineer to wanting to be a journalist to wanting to be a director.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be completely obsessed with that thing for 6 months, and then I'd almost get into a stage of burnout where the idea of doing that is completely off-putting, so I moved on to something else. And sometimes I'd look at people setting up a side project and thinking, yeah, you might be buzzing on that for 6 months, but then after a while, you'll be sick of it and moving on to something else.
But that's good, because I think that means you don't really care about your project. Like, the only reason we stuck with Orfi Active and like Hoops Connect before, it's the same idea, is that I truly am passionate about it and believe in it. That's the only reason we went through all that crap and still are here.
Yeah.
Right? I think what you're saying is, like, you get tired of something after 6 months, you go into something else. That means, right, this wasn't interesting for me interesting enough for me to not get tired of it and burn out of it. Because like everybody gets tired.
Yeah.
It's just like you push through it because you really believe in it and want to do it, right? I think, if that's the case, as an entrepreneur, if that's the case, if you keep, being excited about the new shiny thing out there, that means you don't truly believe in what you're doing.
That's exactly now that you said the shiny thing, that's what I've been thinking of, but I can't find the words for it.
Right.
How the startup founders all over the world and all over the country they've got this main thing and they're happy with it, but then they see something shiny in the distance and they go and run towards that and drop what they've got at the moment. I think my question for you would be, what happens when Orfi Active becomes this huge success? Will you still be kind of distracted by that shiny thing in the distance, or will you become kind of more settled down into that one thing?
I think I am settled down in that one thing, even though I kind of dabble.
Yeah.
But Orfi Active, like I live and breathe it, and that idea. What happens when we get there? I don't know. I think I need to get there. I've never been to that point to say, well, this is how I react to it. So it's very hard to answer that, because you can plan all you want, but until you get there, you just don't know. One thing I do know, and I've seen that multiple times, and kind of the main reason founders and entrepreneurs work on multiple projects. Can you guess what that might be?
No.
It's this, I guess, so it's to do with failure, and I'm trying to find a nice word, and I'll probably say being afraid of this failure boogeyman.
Right.
Because you always have something to fall back on. And when you have conversations, the conversation can be, oh, right, I'm working on these, on a couple of things. This is not really working out, but these things are looking really good.
Okay.
Right? So it's almost like a safety net, right? If these 3 things don't work out, maybe this one will work out. Maybe this one will work out, right? So it comes down to you as a founder and entrepreneur, what's your, how much failure can you get? Because it's a lot riskier to put all your eggs in one basket and just go, I'll do this one thing.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what happens, but if this fails, I'm done. I'm effed, right? Completely. And I'll need to do completely from scratch, right? And this is, I think, what it comes down to.
That's the thing, that because you'll type in on YouTube, you'll type in like how to succeed or how to do well in life, and literally 50% of the videos will be people telling you to commit 100% to one thing and don't look back. And then the other 50% will be telling you, always make sure you have a plan B, always make sure that if you fail, you do have this thing to back up on.
Yeah.
There's not really a clear answer out there, really.
And again, because I think it really depends on your situation. Like, I never really, have a clear plan B.
Yeah.
Just because I don't really think we're gonna fail. Like, it's just, if I think that, then it's kind of like, why am I even doing this, right? While I at the same time I'm aware of the statistics and the probabilities and everything like that, right? Now, and I have to be somewhat cautious of that because now I have a family, right?
Yeah.
Now there's more people depending on me, right? And the older I get, the more that's a responsibility. If you're like 18, 20, like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, you'll fail, you do something else, and you're just on your own and doing your own stuff, right? But when it comes to this working on multiple projects at the same time, I think you always are, even if you don't understand it, because if your projects are big and ambitious, there are so many moving parts within it that it feels like you're already working on so many multiple projects and things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm working on this one thing. No, you're working on like 100 within this one big ambitious project. I think it's your project is not as big, then you can, all right, I'm going to try this out a bit, and then you don't really, maybe it doesn't even require that much attention. But when you're trying to be a global platform that, aims to get everybody active, wherever they are in the world, that's an ambitious goal. And that requires 110% of your attention, right? And even though, because of our current situation, I may be able to put 85 of it, I do want to get to 110% at some point, because I know that's what's needed.
Yeah. That's the thing though, like, from your, I think it's going back to productivity, which we mentioned before.
Yeah.
Would you actually be more productive if you were 100% on Orfi, or does the fact that you allow yourself to, what's the word you were using before? Dabble in it. Does that make you, when you go back to Orfi, then you've taken that small break dabbling, does that make you more motivated and it actually brings more productivity to Orfi
I think
Active?
it depends on your personality, right? So I always think that it's good to go away from what you're doing for a bit, just so you can come back to it with a completely fresh mind and stuff like that, right? And I think when I can't believe I'm saying, when I was younger, that probably was the case.
Yeah.
I look a lot more into different industries, different products and stuff like that, and that will give me a new perspective, and I'll come back to my main thing with a fresh mind. Now it's turned into more of a thing of, I'm going to spend this time with my family, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to go play basketball, just completely get myself away from anything to do business or the project or whatever it may be. And that kind of helps me a lot more now. But because if I try to do the different projects, I think what happens is you start thinking about them more, even if it's unconscious. And you'll work on something in Orfi Active, and you're like, oh, I just found an article. This might be useful for esports Finder. And so what happens is you go from being in the zone to being distracted from it, and then you spend time coming back into the zone of Orfi Active. And that's, in terms of productivity, definitely not.
Yeah. So we've kind of talked about side products for projects for the founder. So then what is your opinion on side projects for an employee? For example, I'm starting a little thing at the weekend.
Yeah.
Is that, would you recommend that?
Love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. Like, I mean, that's how Orfi Active started. It was a complete side hustle while I was having a 9-to-5.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant, because similar to what you said about your career path, every 6 months you thought something else.
Yeah.
I think that helps you, discover yourself more and create the self-awareness of, right, I think this is what really, drives me, and you can then bring that back to your main workplace, depending on what actually the workplace is.
Yeah.
But I'm a big proponent of side.
I think in my opinion, because I've been doing it for about 3 months now. On the one hand, it lets me switch off from the 9-to-5 workday, which is great because I can come in on Monday completely refreshed and ready to go. It's like, because of lockdown at the moment, I can't go and play hockey or meet friends. So this is kind of replacing that. So that's good. It's recharging my batteries. But also, because I've been learning how to do digital marketing and whatever for Orfi Active, it's now allowing me to translate that into my own thing. And even, I know it's a startup and I have a lot more responsibility and I can do a lot more than, say, a big company, but I still feel a lot of responsibility. Whereas if I'm completely on my own thing, I can go and try things that might completely fail. But it's that added learning experience that I can bring back.
But that's the thing. You're going to use digital marketing and your expertise for your side thing.
Yeah.
And you'll maybe discover new things that you can then bring into Orfi Active. And I think that's a great thing, because it's going to be a completely different angle, different industry, but they're all interconnected anyway. So I think there is a difference between when you're an employee and doing side hustles and side projects versus when it's your big project, your main idea, and you're the one that tries to make it, and then you're also distracted by these other things, right? Like, using basketball as an analogy, like you don't see LeBron James, being the best basketball player, currently, on a Tuesday, and on a Wednesday being the best baseball player in a different league. So I think one thing to finish off with would make sense is saying, if you're an employee, if you've got a 9-to-5, if you're at school, at university, I think having side projects and side hustles is a brilliant thing. It will make you learn, challenge yourself, and become a bit more self-aware as to understanding whether you're actually entrepreneurial and you want to do your own thing, or whether you just got some really good ideas, but you like somebody maybe to lead you or join a startup, right? But for founders that actually are working on big projects, ideally one big project, I would just say don't let fear make you quote unquote diversify, right? Don't use multiple projects just to make it safer for yourself. And so that when you have those conversations, you can say, oh, this is not working, but this is. Own it, have a vision, have a passion for it, and just make sure you crush it. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I mean, it's called a side project for a reason. It shouldn't distract you from your main thing at all. But I do see the benefits of it giving you a little bit of a distraction in order for you to work hard on your main thing. I think it's great for employees to kind of seek other opportunities and learn in that way and kind of take a break. So yeah.
So I think that does it. I think we talked enough about side projects. I think we are quite clear that we agree on working on the main thing and then working on the side things. So I would be curious to see whether any of our audience, any of our listeners are working on side projects. What are your thoughts on working on multiple things at the same time? So let us know. Visit the startupdynamics.co website. Ask us a question there, or just let me know on social media, either on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, and we'll get back to you and make sure to include that in the podcast. See you in the next episode.